So here you can see I've got my pencil. It's just like a regular #2 pencil. I also have a good eraser that I can get in there with. Obviously, it's a little bit used, but it'll work just fine. I also have this silver dollar from 1978, and I have a nickel. If you have a quarter or a nickel that you can grab really quick, it might be helpful for this exercise. I also do realize though that there is a change shortage. So if you don't have extra change, that's okay. I can do like, I wish I could do like really fun stuff with my hands, but I'll just have them here. Hi. I also have, I'll wait for you guys to get back and I'll repeat this. I also have gone ahead and layered a couple sheets of paper together here and taped them in the corners. And part of the reason that I've taped these in the corners is to keep it steady with the camera so that we're not getting too goofy. But you definitely want to have, if you're using just plain computer paper, you want to have at least 7 to 10 sheets stacked up so that you're not drawing directly on the hard surface, if you will. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, you guys, is I'm going to take off my ring. If you're wearing jewelry, it can make it more difficult, and this is the hand I'm going to draw since I'm going to be drawing with this hand. So if you've got any jewelry, first of all, let's get that out of the way so that we don't have to worry about that. Okay, the next thing that we are going to be doing is learning how to draw a cylinder in space. So one way that artists deal with complex shapes like our hands is we break them down into more simple shapes. So there are all kinds of interesting sorts of ways that our hands move because they are amazing tools in themselves. But this means that they're very complex. The design, if you will, of these is very complex. And so being able to break these complex shapes down into a simple form is one way that artists work to translate the physical world into the two-dimensional world. So first thing we got to do is figure out how to draw a cylinder, because that is basically what these things are, you guys. Your fingers are basically cylinders that are moving through space in various ways and directions. And if we can kind of figure out how to draw a cylinder, it helps us a whole lot with drawing these things. Okay, so let me go ahead and grab my my silver dollar here. So here you guys can see, if we're looking at the silver dollar straight on, it is literally just a line, right? And then if we look at it flat, it's a perfect circle. And so there's ways that us artists can figure out how to draw this thing like it's flipping in space using ellipses and compressed circles. So if you have a piece of change, this might be helpful for you. If you don't, it's okay. Just do the best you can. We're just trying to get like a really quick idea down about this. Go ahead and move that item up to the top of the page, and you can just trace it. Tracing it will make it a perfect circle pretty easily. And you know, if you want to try to go ahead and draw just a circle, you can do that too. Notice, you guys, that mine's not, it's got, let's see where, talking to myself while I draw is super weird, sorry. Okay, so one thing that is helpful is when you're learning to draw, it's not writing. And you guys can see that my pencil is sharpened really weirdly here. It's because I don't use a regular pencil sharpener, I actually use a knife. But also notice that when you're learning to write, you have this very sort of tight grip up towards the lead on the pencil in order to have enough control to make tiny characters, right? And when we're drawing, we're really working to break that habit of using this as a writing tool, and we're working to bend its function into become a drawing tool. And one of the ways to do that is to actually hold it differently. So instead of holding it up real tight and close, something that can be helpful is to hold it back further and allow your hand to be more relaxed. Drawing is a way of translating the lived world into the two-dimensional form, of course. And the three-dimensional world is varied and complex. And one way that we do that is to work from large shapes to small shapes. But again, we're working with this idea of trying to figure out this eclipse, and holding the pencil further back allows us to not only get more air and lightness into our drawings, it also can help us to draw straighter lines. So the next thing that you're going to do after you've drawn your circle here is to just kind of give yourself two guidelines moving down the sheet of the paper like a column. And again, if I were to try to do this, you know, like all tight close up like this, I'm going to exaggerate it. It might get a little bit funky, right? Because you're being so intense and trying so hard to make this perfect straight line. But if you let the pencil just kind of move parallel to your hand as I'm moving my hand down the page, notice that I'm not using my wrist. That helps me to get a much straighter line. I'm also throwing a ton of stuff at you guys here. Not making a hairy line, right? Sometimes we have a inclination to try to draw a whole bunch of little lines to make one line. And in the real world, there's very few hairy lines. So we are going to try to keep our lines straight and light and loose. All right, let me go ahead and erase our weird, hairy, not straight line. Okay, so now we've gotten a little bit of an idea about how, when you're starting drawing, how you hold the pencil, and some different ideas about why. The next thing that we're going to continue to work on here is this coin flipping in air. So here, if I take this silver dollar and put it down here towards the bottom of the drawing, and again, I mean, I can just sort of visually trace it here. This will give us literally like a line across the bottom here, right? I apologize, this camera is not that great, you guys, if it's a little bit funky. I'm seeing like some weird like yellow on my screen, but I don't know if you guys are seeing that or not. All right, so I'm just gonna like make that a little bit straighter if I can. Okay, so here we've got the view of this coin from the side, and then here we have it from the, I guess that would be like the head, we'll do the head side, right? Okay, so now what we are going to practice doing next here is getting this thing to flip and turn in space. But we're just gonna do one simple flip from down here to here. And so what we are going to practice doing just really quickly, just in 3 different segments here, is compressing, this is what we refer to this as, compressing the space of this round object in order to give it perspective. So this is another kind of linear perspective. And in drawing courses, this is really pretty much like your basic steps, just like how you're going to learn scales if you're learning piano, because you need to figure out where all the keys are before you can put them together. That's what these exercises in drawing are. They're like learning the notes on the scales in order to be able to assemble them into a song. So the next thing I'm gonna do, I actually need to stand up here a little bit, is start to compress this shape. Hold on, I'll start down here. I'll do a really, really compressed one. So if I look at this, you guys can see that the coin itself, and we often use pencils to measure things, I can kind of get an idea as to how much of this, this surface area I'm seeing on the silver dollar here. So I'm just gonna kind of do a little compressed oval. It looks so terrible with this camera. I apologize. And then I'm going to make it a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger until it gets to this full view of it. And again, notice I'm like holding the pencil back far away. I'm not holding it tightly, holding it from about halfway back in order to give myself the ability to make these sort of light, sketchy marks and movements. And we're not looking for perfection here, you guys, by any means. Like, clearly, I'm not even drawing these perfect, right? Like, you know, I could do better if I had like charcoal in a little bit bigger area, but you know, it's just about trying to understand the process. Okay, so here you can see I've got my coins sort of floating in space, going from total side view to total top view. And then what I can do, let's say I've got it like this and I'm going to be spinning it up like this. I can draw this little edge just to help myself locate these forms in space even a little bit more concretely. But I'm going to use these guidelines that I have given myself in order to help get the correct width on each of these little discs that are moving through space. Okay, so now I'm going to sort of give my edge there. Can you guys see that okay? Somebody holler at me. You guys get, is this what, can you guys see the little edge on this one?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, cool. Guys, again, I apologize that my camera is so bad. I think I'm gonna just have to I'm gonna have to order one of these. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and put in this other edge, and then we'll do one more. Okay, can you guys start to see how that's moving through space and how that is starting? This one just looks super funky in the camera. Hang on, let me erase those lines, see if that helps. Yeah, there we go, that's a little bit better. So here I think you're starting, hopefully, to see that when we're looking at it from this direct edge, I'll put in the little coin things, it moves in space as though it is, whoops, so weird, this camera is backwards and upside down for me. So that as it's rotating up through space, we are seeing more and more of this surface until we get to this flat edge. Does this make sense to you guys? Yeah, you're seeing it? Okay, awesome. Okay, and then what this also does is it enables us to draw cylinders, because these are basically the tops and bottoms of cylinders, right? So I'm going to go ahead and erase out my bottom one. And these two. So guys, we're just gonna draw on the same piece of paper all day today. Unless you want to go ahead and switch, you can. I think oftentimes drawings look kind of nice when they have sort of a history behind them. So I've edited it down to just these two coins. And then if I go ahead and attach them, and I'll erase out this back line, I now have a canister. Do you guys see it? Amber, do you see it? You got it? Yes. So this is how we get cylinders to look in space like they are taking up their own space. And you guys, this is pretty much what my finger is, right? So I just have to be able to move this in space and play with it. But this gets us the general shape of one of the digits or segments of one of your fingers or phalanges. So for instance, like if I just think about this being like a finger, does that make sense to you guys? So taking something really complex, like this really incredibly mechanical tool that we have attached to us, our hands, and breaking it down into really simple shapes is one way that artists start to tackle drawing. Okay, so you guys go ahead and erase this. All right, now it's time. We're gonna try drawing our hand. Okay. All right, so the first thing you're gonna wanna do is give yourself a position for your hand that you think is fairly easy, but where your hand isn't completely flat. Because completely flat is actually more difficult in this situation because it's going to end up just looking like one of those like little kid traced turkey things, right? So here what we're going to do is we're going to figure out some kind of position for our hand that is not terribly difficult, but allows you to have some overlap and some ability to find, sorry, I gotta move a cord here, find ability to find large shapes within your hand. Okay, so I'm just gonna do something kind of simple like this. This will be easy. And then the area that's closest to my point of vision, really from where I'm sitting, because remember, I'm looking at my hand from this direction here, and you guys are looking at it more from top down. So my drawing is going to have slightly different perspective than what you guys see in the camera, because I'm working from life. But when I look at my hand from this position, I'm able to identify these as cylinders, right? And this last one is missing, but it's still back there. I've got this cylinder, and then I also have some really big shapes that constitute the rest of the hand here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is try to find those really big shapes. So taking something that is complex and reducing it. So, and it's helpful sometimes to even just go ahead and trace on your hand where you see those big shapes. So like I see this as all, like this section right here as one big shape, and I see this section here as one big shape. So I'm gonna go ahead and start to lay in this big shape that I see here first on my drawing. And the other really big important thing here is that I'm going to make my drawing as big, if not bigger, than my actual hand. Drawing really small makes it hard to get air and life into your drawing. It also makes it harder to make changes. I'm also going to practice holding my pencil back and making really light marks so that I'm not breaking down the cellulose of the fiber in the paper too much. Okay, so hold on, let me look at my thing here.
I missed that direction. Can you repeat that again?
Oh, sure. About which part? What part did you get? Sorry.
I really didn't get any of it. I'm so sorry.
You're okay, sweetie. What you're doing right now is setting up your hand how you want to draw it on your picture plane. You can just copy me if you want. And then we are identifying large areas within the hand that you can make lines around, such as the one that I'm tracing on my hand here, and then translate that into a simple shape that you then draw onto your picture plane. So again, taking really complex shapes and trying to identify a simple shape out of a complex shape. And remember when we were talking about line and we talk about how like artists make up like lines all the time? This is where we do it, you guys. Like I'm like making up a line. I'm like, here's a line, here's this line. and you guys can make up whatever lines you want to make. So I'm gonna go ahead and put in this now back section of my hand. Avery, was that helpful? Do you understand now?
Yes, it just does not look good.
It's okay, you guys. Seriously, it should look terrible. Just to warn you. Like, these should not be good. Like, it's like if I handed, like, if you'd never played guitar before and I handed you a guitar and was like, go play some like Bach sonatas, would you be able to do it? No. Like, if you do an amazing drawing, then I don't know. We'll have to have like a talk about recruiting you to the art department. um, but really, they should not be good right now because, again, we're just learning the very basic notes of the song that is going to become our drawing. So here, this is this section of my hand here. And then I sort of identified this kind of rectangle with like a rounded corner as the part that's going across my knuckles towards my wrist. And that's what I translate as this shape right here. So I've got again, like broken down into just two shapes. Like, so all this complexity, I get it down into two shapes. I'm also going to make sure that I put in my knuckles and some of my joints as well to give my hand structure, because we do have all of these bones, and I'm lucky that I've got really veiny, bony hands, so it's easy for me to see all this stuff. If you don't, it might be a little bit more difficult. But the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and put in this knuckle right here. And tracing it on my hand, it needs to be at least that big on my picture plane as well. So that I'm not just like trying to get like this much of my knuckle. I want like this much of my knuckle, because that's what's going to bring my hand together, is having these shapes overlap each other and work together, much like our hands do. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and sort of figure out where that knuckle might be. So it's probably right about there. And then I'm gonna find this next knuckle. And again, I'm gonna kind of pretend I have like X-ray vision, and this knuckle is really overlapped behind this other knuckle. So if we think about these being oranges or apples and them layering one behind the next, and pretending that we've got that X-ray vision, I know that that knuckle is gonna be right about there. And then we've got a third one, and we even have a fourth one. It's just hidden right now. I mean, you can barely see it. It's like this little tiny lump right here on the back side of my hand, but it's there. So I'm gonna go ahead and pretend I have that X-ray vision and put it into my drawing. So right now you should basically have two shapes and four circles. We're really trying to break this hand down into its most basic elements. We also have this joint right here, which is incredibly important, right? Like this thumb addition to this thing right here, this rig called the hand. This is one of the things that enables us to do incredible things compared to other animals, right? And so I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that I get that super important joint in there as well. Okay, now that I've gotten some big shapes pulled out of this complex form, I'm just gonna go ahead and give myself a little bit of a wrist bone here as well, because we kind of want to make sure that we attach our hands to something so it's not just completely disembodied, unless you would like that, unless, you know, it's starting to get a little bit towards Halloween. If you want to do like the crawling hands, that's fine. But now what I need to do is start to figure out how I'm going to find the cylinders within these fingers. So I'm going to be thinking about that coin that we drew before. And I don't know if this will be helpful to you guys, but this is where my nickel comes in. If I take my nickel and I put it right here, and I pretend, this is a little gruesome, but pretend I can chop it through my finger, you can see that it will be at about this angle, looking down from you guys, your perspective of it. And as it's moving down the finger and it gets to be about here, now you can see how that, what was moving back and forth in that drawing that we did, how that circular line is wrapping around the finger and how that cylinder is moving through space. I don't know if that's helpful to you guys, but I know it's really helpful to me to think about dissecting these complex forms almost like a mathematical or engineering problem is how I think about it. And I really enjoy technical drawing for this reason. So I'm gonna go ahead and start to think about putting in my thumb first. And let me just kind of go and, again, I'm gonna pretend I've got this X-ray vision. And from where I'm looking, my thumb is, I've got more of a view from this angle, right? So if I were to be able to look into this cylinder, it would look kind of like this. Can you guys see? I'll do it kind of a little bit harder. Can you guys see that? And again, breaking it into really, really, really simple shapes. But if I were to break my thumb down into just 2 cylinders, from my perspective sitting over here, this is basically what I'm seeing. And again, I can make these like, here, I'll make like a dotted line for the back of that one. I don't know if you guys can see that, but you know, pretending I have X-ray vision and I can look into this like a cylinder moving in space away from me. But I'm gonna go ahead and erase out some of these lines here. So we're just getting the outside edge lines, or what we call contour lines. From where I'm sitting, I also can find a line right here. I don't know if you guys can see that in the your view. I'm just going to draw them myself. But I might just kind of think about putting a little bit of that line in right now, just to kind of give myself a little bit more structure. All right, so we've got, let's see, I want to get this knuckle in here a little bit more. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to move to my fingers. And one thing that's very helpful whenever you are drawing is to use your drawing tool also as a measuring tool. So for instance, let's see if I can do this from your guys' perspective. Okay, so I could take my pencil and measure the length of my finger like this, from like the tip of, whoops, wrong finger. What finger am I doing? There we go. From the tip of my finger, I can line the pencil lead up with it and measure that to my knuckle, and then use that measurement other places. So for instance, is that measurement about the length of the width of my hand? You know, from my viewpoint, not yours. So, but this is not only an amazing drawing tool, it's an amazing measuring tool. So one way to help yourself get the proportions correct on any drawing is to use this as a way to measure one thing against something else. Another thing that's going to really assist me here is to pay attention to the negative spaces, right? So if I can see how much paper I can see, you know, poking around these fingers, and pay attention to that shape as well, that will also help me to get correct perspective and proportion on the rest of my hand. Okay, so again, from where I'm sitting, I have a little bit different view here, but I'm gonna go ahead and start to think about where these 2 fingers are lining up on the picture plane. And they really are almost touching, right? Depending on what view you're looking at it from. So I'm gonna go ahead and start to put in this finger. And sometimes you guys, I honestly think of this as like the tornado drawing. Like I kind of just make like these sort of like big, light, loose, like kind of tornado-y marks to help myself get volume and form moving through space, especially when dealing with cylinders like a finger. Again, I'm going to find my knuckle here. Again, thinking about really those 3 cylinders connecting to each other. Okay, so now I've got my thumb and my index finger in, and then I can use these fingers to measure this finger. And I can also use just straight up angles from my pencil too. Like if you're inclined to think about math in degrees, if this is if this is like straight up and down and this is 90 degrees, what's that, like about like 160, 180 or something like that. So that's another way to sort of think about measuring what you're seeing. And again, I'm measuring for you guys from your perspective with the camera here, but my drawing perspective is quite different. In fact, from where I'm looking, this finger is really tucked in behind this finger. But I'm gonna go ahead and start to, again, use that X-ray vision. Guys, this is awesome. When you're an artist, you can just kind of make stuff up in order to have it translate properly for your viewer. So for instance, here, I'm gonna go ahead and put in the underside of this finger in order to help myself find the joint in the proper place and allow it to rest naturally behind the index finger. And then I can come back and erase those lines out so that I don't get myself visually confused. All right, so I can already tell that I'm starting to have a problem that I always have, which is that my hand gets out of proportion with itself. My fingers are already getting too big, and this is not big enough compared to my fingers. But that's not a worry, you guys, because it's easy to fix this stuff. And again, like there's always going to be constant adjustments. But I'm still going to keep just sort of tooling along on my fingers here, even though I'm starting to see that I'm having some stuff out of proportion, but I can fix it later, so it's okay. Okay, so now I'm going to start to work on this finger. Again, here's my knuckle from this one. And I can see a tiny bit of this back finger. Hi, guys. From where I'm at. Again, I'm going to think about that X-ray vision and that knuckle that's underneath there. And this one's actually tucked so far back in there that I can't see the edge of it. I can just only see this knuckle right here. So I'm really using that key use of overlap here as well in order to give the illusion that this hand has volume and form and is actually resting on a surface as well. All right, so then let's go to this last finger here. Maybe I'll just I'll just leave it. Again, kind of using that X-ray vision. And then it's bent and tucking in behind this other finger. Okay, and I may have emphasized it a little bit too much. Okay, so how are you guys doing? Somebody speak up. You guys following along? Avery, are you doing okay?
I'm doing my best.
All right.
I'm doing a terrible job.
Wait, who is that?
I'm doing a terrible job. It looks awful.
Oh, good. You're human. Yeah, it should not look good, you guys. Seriously, if you've never taken drawing or practiced this before, it should not be good unless you're like some kind of crazy savant, which if you are, then kudos to you. Yeah, this takes a lot of practice. Okay, so now that I've got like my basic, big shapes broken down here, I'm gonna kind of work on my proportions a little bit to see if there's anything that I need to fix. And again, I'm gonna use my pencil to measure in order to try to find where I've got discrepancies. So kind of like weirdly drawing halfway between life and halfway between the camera. All right, but here we go. I'm just kind of doing some measurements from where I'm sitting. And I always, another like pro tip for you guys, if you don't know which is your dominant eye, we can figure that out, but it's really good to use just your dominant eye when measuring with this thing, so that you're not getting the double vision. Unlike many other times when you need to use both eyes, like if you're participating in certain sports, you really kind of want to isolate your vision down to just one thing. Okay, so I just measured my finger compared to my knuckles on my hand, and now I'm going to do it actually with my drawing as well and see if that proportion is the same. Okay, so I was right. My hand got too small compared to my finger. So I kind of need to make that a little bit bigger. I'm going to pay attention to like this interesting little bump out here too. I don't know if you guys can see the way that my flesh is being pressed up by the tabletop there. Little tiny details like that are what make drawings believable. And it's also interesting because this is one of those things that, in life that makes you slow down. Like when you draw, you really have to slow down and look very, very closely at your subject matter, whatever it may be. And it's really kind of antithetical to our modern day life where things are really fast all the time. Drawing really forces you to slow down and spend time with not only yourself, but your subject matter, which is part of the reason why I think I love doing it so much. I definitely don't do it enough, I can say that. All right, so now that I've got this basic, very loosely sketched together structure here, I can go in and I can start to actually erase some of my guidelines. But I like having sort of the echo of those guidelines in my drawing because they tend to give it, for me at least, a little bit more soul or texture or tactility. So I am going to come in and just kind of loosely take some of this stuff out just to help myself also see where I'm at with my drawing. Does anybody play video games? Do you guys play video games? Anybody?
Very little though.
So, but you know how like when you first start playing like a video game, like you're like trying to control the character and you don't know how to make the buttons work and it's like can be very frustrating. And then after you've practiced quite a bit, all of a sudden you're like running and jumping and like going through whatever. Drawing is very much the same way. The more you practice at it, the quicker you and faster you become, and also, of course, the more proficient. All right, so now that I've got this sort of general shape mapped out here for myself, I'm just gonna come back in and maybe sort of take some more of these lines out a little bit. And then I'll put them back in. I just want to chill them out a little bit. Let's see, we're at 114. Okay, cool, we're doing good. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in and I'm going to be much more intentional about the lines that I am looking at and translating to my drawing. And furthermore, I'm even going to think about atmospheric perspective. So that amazing thing that Da Vinci does with the Mona Lisa, where she's all in focus and the background behind her gets further and further grayed out and bluish, because we have this amazing thing where we can see water molecules in the air. I'm even going to do that in this tiny little drawing of my hand. And the way that you do this is by using contrast. So things that are close to the eye have more contrast, and things that are further away have less contrast. So for instance, in this case, the finger that is closest to my vision and perspective is my index finger. So I'm gonna bump up on the contrast on this and this part of the hand, and then I'm gonna let the contrast on this back part of the hand just kind of fade away as much as possible. I'm also just gonna be looking more closely at smaller details now that I've gotten this whole complex object kind of mapped out and translated into a couple really big shapes. Because remember, again, like we basically have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 shapes, including your fingers, that I was able to get this incredibly complex thing down into. So now I'm gonna, again, start looking more at these details. I'm also going to be thinking about like what's underneath my hand. So I know that I've got these bones that are underneath here. And sometimes, you guys, it's even helpful to like feel around in your hand. Like, where are those bones? Like, what do they feel like? Sometimes actually touching whatever it is that you're trying to draw can help you to translate it better as well, depending on what kind of learner you are. So we all learn differently as well. So I am going to work on, let's see, what am I going to look at? Oh, I need to fix this. This needs to overlap more. All right, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to work on my knuckles a little bit. One of the reasons that I think it's really nice to let what I call air into your drawing, or not have your big heavy outlines around things, is because in the real world, of course, there's no big heavy outlines around anything. We make up lines with our own way of determining them. But the other thing is that we breathe air and we are full of water, right? You guys, like, we are, how much, does anybody know how much water we are? Isabel, do you know? I feel like you might know this.
Is it like 70 something?
It's like a lot. Yeah, it's like a really high percentage, right? And so if we think about that, this means that our bodies are fluid and are constantly in motion. And so having lines that are fluid and constantly having the feeling of motion is much more accurate or representative of us in general, right? If I were to, hold on, I'll do like a little drawing here. All right, here's my creepy little like weird hard line drawing. Do you guys see that weird little hand down there? So I don't know if you guys agree, but this looks flatter already than this. And the reason it looks flatter is because it's got those hard, dark outlines all around it that don't allow for any air, water, or light to get in to this structure of my hand. Okay, so I'm gonna still continue to work on bumping up the contrast on these elements of the hand that are closest to my vision. So let me come back in here. All right, now let me look and see. I got my knuckle here. Again, paying attention to negative space from where I'm seeing, from sitting, I can see a lot of it right here. Can't really see much of my fingernail, maybe just like a tiny little blip of it. Just gonna kind of keep working on getting some of the details into this part of the hand, just real light and loose. I might even like throw a couple like random lines in here for like these giant veins that I have. Think about this cylindrical quality of the arm and wrist, and just kind of put some lines in and erase some lines out. Again, just to give it some more texture. Does anybody have any questions right now? Or are you guys doing okay?